Hello, my name is Sandy Adamitis, the social media director for the Page International Screenwriting Awards, and your host for the Writers Hangout, a podcast that celebrates the many stages of writing, from inspiration to the first draft, revising, getting a project made, and everything in between. We'll talk to the best and the brightest in the entertainment industry and create a space where you can hang out, learn from the pros, and have fun. Hey, writers and friends. As of today, February 2nd, 2025, the Pacific Palisades and Eaton fires are 100% contained. As I mentioned in part 1, I wanted to let you know which structures in the Thelma Todd story survived the fires. As reported in Vanity Fair by Greer Sinclair, I'll put a link in the show notes to this really cool article. The flames moved up to the turrets of Castle Del Mar. Black smoke stained their ornate walls, but data complied by LA County recovers the original building of the Sidewalk Cafe, Casella Del Mar, and the turquoise blue garage doors, which guard the site of Thelma's final hours, are still standing. Now, I've seen conflicting reports as to whether Roland and his ex-wife Carmen's estate made it through the fires. Also, Matthew Perry's house survived. I hope you enjoy the conclusion of Who Killed Thelma Todd in Pacific Palisades. I have to open up with an apology to our listeners. I kept calling Thelma Todd's car the Phantom. I was completely wrong. I apologize to all the car people out there. It's called the Phaeton. And Phaeton is a light open four-wheeled horse-drawn car, is the definition, or also known as a vintage touring car. So it's a Phaeton. Okay, let's review. Last week, we told you the story of Thelma Todd. She's an actress with sharp comedic timing who found success in Hollywood. She starred in movies with the Marx Brothers, Laurel and Hardy, and Zazu Pitts. At 29, Thelma died under suspicious circumstances. The day Thelma was last seen was Saturday, December 15th, 1935, in Pacific Palisades. She had spent the day Christmas shopping with her mom and attended a dinner thrown by the Lupinos and their actress daughter, Ida Lupino, at the Trocadero, a world-famous restaurant on Sunset Boulevard. Thelma was the guest of honor. In the early morning hours, Thelma's driver dropped Todd off in front of her Sidewalk Cafe on PCH, where she lived in an ocean view apartment on the second level. This is where our story begins, the second part and conclusion. December 16th at 10-ish, Thelma's maid. I've decided to not call her Thelma's maid because it just feels very derogatory. So I'm going to call her Thelma's assistant from now on. Thelma's assistant, May Whitehead, began her morning by heading to the garage to drive Thelma's Phaeton from the garage down the hill to Todd at her apartment above the cafe. When May opened the garage, she found Thelma slumped over the steering wheel. Here's where I find conflicting reports that never get resolved, by the way. The LA Times reported blood marred Thelma's features and stained her blue and silver evening gown. Her nose was broken and she had 2 cracked ribs. Other reports were specks of blood were around her mouth. So 2 very, very different reports. Now, the reporters reported the first part and medical examiners the latter.
You're going to want to sit down again.
Yeah. Now, why was Thelma in the garage in the first place? Let's review. I think giving you an idea of the landscape will help. Thelma Todd's Cafe was located in a large commercial building that sat right on PCH in the Pacific Palisades. It was built as a shopping center in 1928. So this was a very large building. Thelma's Cafe was on the first level. She lived on the second level with an ocean view apartment. as did her business partner and sometimes boyfriend and owner of the building, Roland West, who we talked about in the first episode. There was also an exclusive club on the second floor called Joya. From the back of Thelma's cafe up the hillside are stairs. There are 271 steps that lead up to Pastino Drive. And 1,000 feet, once you get up to the road, 1,000 feet away is where the garage is located. And that's where Thelma's body was found. Past the garage is the estate of West, a hillside estate. So he had the hillside estate West, and he also stayed at the cafe where Thelma lived. Does that help picturing things?
Yeah, it was even better that you sent me a photo of the place. Are you going to include that?
Absolutely. Please go on our Instagram, check Twitter. Back to Monday, December 16th. Again, it's 7 a.m. and May found Thelma in the garage. May called the cafe. Someone there tells West. May then drove down to the cafe. This is all very close, all within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
May drives down to the cafe. She picks up West. They go up to the garage. May stays outside and West goes into the garage and he touches Thelma's face. He says there are few drops of blood around her mouth. West wipes them off with his handkerchief. Don't do that. Just don't do that. West asked May to drive up the hill to the estate to get the Schaefers, Rudolph, the restaurant manager, and his wife, Alberta, West's sister-in-law. West tells Rudolph to take his car that was parked in the stall next to the Phaeton to get a doctor and the police. West then sends May to call Todd's mother. Poor woman. She could have called her while she was at the house, and let the Schaefers drive the car back. But they got May running back and forth. Also, I find it suspicious that West moved the car next to Thelma. I cannot come up with any specifics. I just find it suspicious.
It's odd.
Rudolph didn't have a car?
Yeah.
I know we're both trying really hard to not make any Rudolph jokes, correct?
Especially at this season.
It's been really tough. How about you?
My nose is red thinking about it.
West. Now, everyone's gone, and West and his sister-in-law are the only ones there. And West, who is a former director and screenwriter, he starts doing his own investigation. He pointed out to Alberta the car's ignition button was in the on position, and that a robe customarily kept in the trunk was missing. It appeared to him that Thelma, whom he had not seen since Saturday, he said, had fallen asleep while running the engine of the car, perhaps for warmth. Makes sense. I don't think he should have been poking around the garage.
Right.
And then everyone descended upon Pastino Drive, outside the garage. Two places, inside the garage, outside of the garage. Pastino Drive, outside the garage. A group of Thelma's friends gathered at Pastino, including Thelma's mom, Alice, who was 56 at the time.
Wow.
Alice was driven to the garage by Harvey Priester, the son of a prominent Hollywood family and Todd's former boyfriend. Alice was beside herself with grief, of course. Also present was Pascal Pat DiCicco. We remember Pat.
Yep.
He was Todd's abusive ex-husband who was at the Trocadero the night before with actress Margaret Lindsay, his 25-year-old date.
Did Margaret come with him on this expedition?
No, she didn't. Okay. She probably had an early call that day. DiCicco was on the Paramount lot when he heard the news about Thelma, and he rushed over. DiCicco slipped into the garage when no one was looking to take a glimpse at Thelma. Then he just sat in his car. He told reporters, "It seemed so unreal that Thelma's life had been so suddenly ended. I wanted to see the proof with my own eyes." He wanted to make it clear that this was a need for realization and not a lingering or reborn relationship that propelled him into the garage. Until last Friday, I hadn't seen Thelma for a year. Friday at lunch, I saw Thelma at the Vendrome. We spoke for a moment, quite briefly, and that was the last I saw of her. So he's showing up at the crime scene and giving his alibi. All in one.
Yeah.
Suspicious.
It doesn't feel right.
Ida Lupino disagreed with DiCicco and told detectives that DiCicco asked for an invite to the party at the Trocadero, saying he and Thelma were pals and it would be swell. Lupino told Todd her ex-husband wanted an invite and Thelma was pleased. Thelma didn't want to arrive at the restaurant with DiCicco because she said it wouldn't look right, so she suggested he sit next to her. And remember, there was an empty spot next to her.
Well, that explains that.
When Thelma and Stanley Lupino danced by DiCicco and Margaret's table, remember there was supposedly words exchanged? Mm-hmm. Patrons came forward and said, this is what the conversation was. Fancy seeing you here. You're a nice guy. You said you couldn't make this party, and here you are. And then she danced off. That's very actress-like. I could,
yeah, it's pretty
with a turn. I bet Lupino gave her a good turn away from the table. I bet he was really supportive of her and her little quip to this.
It's a shame it wasn't filmed.
This guy,
yes, very slick.
Also outside were tons of reporters who took notes, and the police allowed them to take shots of the car and of Thelma, and I find that disgusting.
So she was not. When this crowd arrived, she
was still in the car.
And that was protocol back in...
I guess so.
Okay.
Inside the garage, the car was backed into the right-hand stall. The bumper was pressed firmly against an old suitcase and a couple of tires. To the right, nearest the driver's side, a desk, a daybed, and trunks were piled against the cement wall. A stall for a second automobile was to the left and empty. Sounds like a very normal garage. And there were living quarters up above it.
Above the garage.
Above the garage, yes. LAPD Captain Bruce Clark, the first cop on the scene, began his grim work. Thelma's blonde locks covered half her face, and when Clark felt Thelma's body, it was cold and stiff and appeared to him to be dead for some time. Thelma had on her brooch with a faded flower pinned on her dark blue evening gown. Remember, she bought the flower on her way to the Trocadero.
Yep.
Her arms hugged her chest, the hands cupped near her face, but her legs were twisted unnaturally from the center of the seat towards the driver's side door. One foot rested to the automobile's foot pedals. So the only thing I can think of, and she was kind of slumped over, is that maybe when May opened up the door, she slid a little bit down and out, but that pretty much was her position when she died.
You don't think that she was in the motion of trying to get out of the car?
Could have been. Absolutely, she could have been. Yes. Overcome. Placed, the door not shut properly.
All right, there's all that.
There's all that. And we're all taking West for his word. I don't think May had any reason to move or adjust her body. But if West is covering something up, he was alone in the garage with Thelma's body for a while, when you think about it. The investigation is interrupted by the arrival of the chief of Los Angeles Police Department's homicide squad. The chief bent over Thelma, touched the nape of her neck while photographers were allowed to get the shot. Because the chief held the pose for several seconds. Then he left. That was it.
Wow.
Clark noticed Thelma's clothes looked neat. They weren't in disarray, and there was a bit of dust on the passenger side. There were no weapons or any signs of violence.
So far, the only blood was on her mouth?
With speckles of blood around her mouth. And I'll bring this up later, but in carbon monoxide poisoning, they say that that's not unusual for the skin color to change and to have some frothing from your mouth.
Okay.
But then again, I thought West wiped that off, or maybe he didn't wipe it off completely. I'm confused.
Well, it's on his
that.
handkerchief.
It's on his handkerchief. No forensics those days, but it was on his handkerchief. Clark thought Thelma could have collapsed and struck her face on the steering wheel. Okay. Thelma's fur, jewelry, gloves, and white evening purse containing 4 handkerchiefs, a cigarette case, lipstick, and a small white coin purse with a single Yale door key were inside. The dashboard showed 3 gallons left in the tank, and he, too, wondered why the engine stopped with gas remaining in the tank. Reporters would say, if Thelma was cold, why didn't she put on the gloves that were found? At 2 p.m., the authorities removed Thelma's body from the car. Later at the coroner's office, during a cursory examination, attendants found a temporary tooth loose in Thelma's mouth. Remember we talked, she went to the dentist.
Oh, yeah. So it was loose.
Yeah, so that would make you wonder if she hit her head on the steering wheel, that might knock a tooth loose. Or somebody was pushing her around and knocked the tooth loose. Mm-hmm. Also, temporaries being loose, that's kind of common when you think about it. It had been a busy day in the county morgue. Earlier, a WPA worker shot 6 of his coworkers at a storm drain project near the corner of Exposition and La Brea, plus a 7th victim when a service station manager tried to phone the police. Cannot believe there was a mass shooting on the same day that they found Thelma, and we consider that kind of a product of our day.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought that was our era only.
Exactly.
The mass shooting thing.
And the WPA, I didn't recognize that. I figured they were some kind of city workers, but I didn't know what WPA meant. And it was designed to relieve the unemployed by providing jobs and income for millions of Americans at its height in the late 1938.
Yeah, that's an FDR thing. Yeah.
The next day, Tuesday, the detectives interview West at his hillside estate. I'm calling privilege on this one. Why did he not have to go to the police station? Now you've got these detectives going up the hill in Pacific Palisades to a large estate to start interviewing this businessman about Thelma's death. They're already in a lesser than position. They don't have the upper authority hand there. Do you think? Do you agree?
Right. They don't have it.
There, West gives the detectives his theory of what happened to Thelma. He said when Thelma reached her apartment door, she found it deadbolted from the inside. Why? Because West had slid the deadbolt into place an hour before when he came through the door after walking her dog. He didn't realize Thelma didn't have all of her keys and couldn't open the deadbolt. Thelma, being a very considerate girl, would not want to disturb anyone's sleep, so she climbed the hill to the garage to wait for someone to be at the cafe around 6 a.m. After sitting for some time in the front seat of the Phaeton, with the garage doors closed, she started the engine either to heat the garage's chilly morning air or to warm the motor to drive to her mother's apartment on Fountain Avenue in Hollywood.
Yeah, mom is the obvious choice in a situation like that. I think people are aware of carbon monoxide poisoning.
There was a campaign going on during that time about the dangers of carbon monoxide.
Okay.
Would she be that considerate that she would climb a bunch of stairs in basically the wilderness, that hillside, during December?
Right. Super steep. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. And I'm sure things have changed, but my idea of an actress who's kind of successful
Yes.
saying, I guess I'll just sit in this car overnight because I won't want to bother anybody.
Exactly.
That doesn't seem right.
The same car her assistant has to bring up and down the hill for her, depending where she is. The actress who had a chauffeur.
Right. And as far as you know, I'm not an actress, but I wouldn't even put up for that. I would just go and I'd knock on somebody's door and go, I can't believe I locked myself out. You have to help me. Look, I'm shivering.
And there are previous reports that she had locked herself out before and broke a pane in one of the windows and yelled for somebody.
Right. This sounds like another pain breaking time.
Yes. The doctor on the scene, remember, West said to Rudolph, go get the police, go get a doctor, was also West's personal physician. And the doctor gave his opinion to the detectives. The doctor said that Thelma suffered a heart attack after climbing up all those stairs. West confirmed this, saying Thelma had a record of heart trouble. Later, Alice, Thelma's mom, would recall that a life insurance company recently refused Thelma coverage because of her heart condition. I have a problem with this too. Now, actors have to get physicals before they start movies and TV shows.
Right.
Maybe they didn't do that back in the day. Maybe you didn't have to have a physical before you signed on to a movie.
I bet that's the truth.
They had those actors doing their own stunts half the time, so they probably didn't care to do a physical.
Well, the woman's a dancing woman. She dances. I don't know how big I don't know how that one fits anyway.
No, there wasn't. A lot of people didn't lean into that theory. It seemed only the doctor kind of said that. And again, he didn't even examine Thelma. It was just all based on his opinion. West's theory of what happened to Thelma got a huge endorsement that very afternoon by Joseph Schneck, head of United Artists and a powerful man in Los Angeles. Schneck rushed to West's side and his defense. He rushed to the Hillside estate. Reporters were still outside. He talked to West, came outside and said, absolutely no doubt that Thelma Todd's death was accidental. Nobody asked for his opinion. He just took it upon himself.
With a name like Schneck,
yes,
you just think you know.
Yes. So now we have 3 men the very next day just coming out. It was accidental. Nothing to see here, folks. Let's move along. That evening, the coroner's office said Thelma Todd died from carbon monoxide poisoning. Nothing indicated a struggle or suggested foul play. The autopsy surgeon found vital organs normal. Her stomach was partially filled with undigested food that normally would require 6 to 8 hours to digest. Considering that the other guests at the Trocadero reported Thelma dined between 11:30 and midnight Sunday morning, and factoring in, this I did not know, but I guess I should have, the effects of alcohol on digestion, it slows it down.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I didn't know that. The coroner declared the undigested food in her stomach indicated that she died around 6 a.m. Sunday morning. That's it, right?
Yeah.
Case closed.
Right.
That's the end. Christmas music?
Let's hear it.
Hold on.
Oh, no.
Martha Ford, a friend of Thelma's, swears she spoke with Thelma sometime between 4 and 4:30 p.m. Sunday afternoon.
Wait a minute.
So how did Thelma climb up the hill to the garage, die at 6 a.m., and still try to make it to a party in the valley?
It was a great party. You had to be there.
Yes. Martha Ford was married to the actor Wallace Ford. The detectives interviewed Martha at her home at 3582 Laurel Canyon Boulevard. Again, nobody has to go in for questioning. Martha tells them, I gave a party Sunday afternoon at our home, to which 350 guests were invited. Okay, Martha. That's kind of a brag. Last Thursday, I telephoned Miss Todd to invite her, but she was not in. I left word for her to call me. She did call Saturday, but I was not in. The party was in full swing when our telephone rang Sunday afternoon. I answered the phone. Personally, Thelma Todd was on the wire. I have talked with her, not once, but hundreds of times, and I am certain it was her voice, as I am sitting here. She said, "Can I reach your house by way of Ventura Boulevard? It's closer for me." I told her that she could. For everyone out there, Ventura Boulevard and Laurel Canyon cross.
Yes.
I told her that she could. She said, "I'll be there in a half hour. The only hitch is, can I bring a guest?" I said, "Certainly." She said, "When you see who I'm bringing, you are going to drop dead." Oh, and another thing, I went to a party last night and I'm still in evening clothes. Do you mind? I laughed and said to come in anything she wanted, but to hurry, and we hung up. Is your mind just blown, Terry?
Yeah, it's blown.
It's just...
And she's sticking with this story.
Yes. Then 2 men who worked at a Christmas tree lot in Hollywood came forward to report selling Thelma and a dark stranger a tree around midnight on Sunday, adding days later, 2 guys came to the lot in a long black car with guns and warned them from talking to the police about Thelma and the dark stranger being there.
All right, one more. Let's go over this one more time. So they bought a Christmas tree at midnight.
On Sunday.
On Sunday. And the place was open for sale.
Yes.
Then some hoodlums came next.
Days later. And they said, "Don't tell anyone that Thelma and a stranger was here on Sunday night trying to buy a Christmas tree."
Okay.
Soon, rumors abound, and it was alleged that the mob boss, Lucky Luciano, liked Thelma's Sidewalk Cafe's semi-remote location and wealthy clientele and wanted an illegal casino on the 3rd floor, and Thelma opposed it, and he murdered her for it.
Oh.
Could happen.
Wow.
Well, now the detectives are in a pickle. They put Thelma's case to bed, saying she died early Sunday morning. Oops. The police went back to the drawing board. More people came forward saying they saw Thelma on Sunday. The detectives passed on most of the claims, but felt one witness was very credible. His name was W.F. Persons. He was the owner of a cigar store at 8th and Figueroa Street in downtown L.A. Persons told police that Thelma entered his store around 9 a.m. Sunday morning. In a low-cultured voice, she asked him to dial a telephone number on the store's payphone. I was afraid she would collapse. She was haggard and ghastly looking, as if she had gone for a long time without sleep and was under some terrific mental strain. Person had to wait on a customer, but he thought she made an appointment with the person she called. Reporters went crazy when this got out. There was blood in the water, and they swam with it. They uncovered that Thelma recently was the victim of extortion. We're just going to add another brick in the wall here. In February 1935, Thelma received threatening notes signed with the drawing of the ace of hearts, spades, and diamonds. The notes demanded $10,000 and threatened to lay you out unless the money was paid. Threatening phone calls to the cafe from the ace followed the notes. The FBI investigated. 2 agents were sent to guard Thelma, but she got tired of not having any privacy, and it just annoyed her. So she dismissed them. Thelma also decided she didn't want to live in fear of kidnapping and extortion anymore, and on her own agreed to meet the extortionists in Hollywood. She brought with her a .22 revolver. When they met up, the man told Thelma to drive to a remote spot, but Thelma said no thanks, and she left. Long story short, the next time Thelma agreed to meet with the extortionists, the FBI were involved, and a 26-year-old drugstore handyman was arrested. The handyman was described by his parents as mentally unsound. A lot going on.
Wow.
Newspapers proclaimed that Thelma received additional notes weeks before her death, including one threatening her for failing to pay her gambling losses.
Oh.
Okay. A grand jury was convened. West, DiCicco, Martha Ford were among those who testified, but the jury was not persuaded by the testimony from celebrities who contradicted each other. LAPD Captain Bruce Clark, the first cop that was on the scene, said the bottoms of Thelma's silk slippers, when he testified, were scuffed up quite a bit and gave the appearance or indicated that she had walked quite some distance on cement. It was reported that her slippers showed no signs that she could have climbed the 271 hillside steps, which was the direct route from the cafe to the garage. But the police say, no, that's not true. Her slippers were very scuffed. But she also danced a lot that night.
Yeah. I think the slipper thing is going to be weak.
The police did have a woman the same build as Thelma climb the stone steps in similar slippers. And I guess the same thing happened. I'm with you, though. I'm really iffy on the slippers being scuffed.
Yeah. But they actually went to the trouble of...
Yes, they did.
Huh.
Absolutely. A medical examiner testified there were no bruises and only a tiny bit of blood on Thelma's lip, which was consistent with post-mortem changes in mucous membranes typical of carbon monoxide poisoning. DiCicco told jurors that he asked for an invitation to Lupino's Trocadero party as a joke and never seriously thought of accepting. He sent a message to the Lupinos saying he wouldn't be able to attend the party. He said after the Trocadero, he took Margaret home, then he went to his own home, which most men do when they're dating 25-year-old actresses. As far as the rumor of reconciliation between him and Thelma, he said there was nothing between them. Martha Ford had to admit that when she answered the phone during her party on Sunday afternoon, she thought the caller first said it was Thelma. When Martha asked Thelma who, Thelma replied, No, this is Thelma Todd. You know, Toddy, you're hot Toddy. Get a hold of yourself, Toots. Now, this tarnished Martha's story, but then people also said she hated to be called hot Toddy. She never referred to herself as hot Toddy. But, you know, who knows what state she was in. Deputy DA George Johnson said someone's covering up something. Someone we think knows how Thelma Todd died. None of the apparent facts smooth out. In the end, the grand jury just stopped, and Thelma Todd's death was left an accident. Case closed, but not solved. Wait.
There's more.
There's more. I'm going to give you 3 quick theories, and then, well, we'll just get to it and I'll explain.
Okay.
Theories. Cujo. Thelma was locked out of her building. Her apartment was in and went to the garage of West's house, where she got into the car, turned it on to stay warm, making the fatal mistake of leaving the engine running with the garage door shut.
Sure.
Theory number 2, the virgin suicides. Thelma killed herself in the garage of her lover. No evidence. Won't even entertain this theory.
Okay.
The fugitive. Thelma was murdered by jealous West. Abusive DiCicco or West's wife, Carmen Jewell. The Chicago Tribune claimed Carmen threatened to kill Todd for squandering money at the restaurant where she and her husband West were in business with Thelma. It is a motive. However, there is no physical evidence that Carmen was involved in Thelma's death. Mm-hmm. Casino. Lucky Luciano, the mobster who wanted to set up a casino on the 3rd floor, killed Thelma for saying no. Mm. Unfaithful. In my research, I came across a website by Marvin J. Wolfe, an author and photojournalist. Marvin wrote the book Fallen Angels, Chronicles of LA Crimes and Mysteries. He became interested in trying to solve the death of Thelma Todd. He interviewed Hal Roach, the legendary comedy director and screenwriter who was the founder of the Hal Roach Studios. Roach Studios was home to Our Gang series, and he worked with Thelma. Hal was 90 at the time, and he said West was very possessive, very controlling. West told Thelma she had to be back by 2 a.m. Now remember, Thelma told her driver she had to be home by 1:55 a.m. for an appointment. Now, maybe if I was in my 20s and dating someone who said be home at 2, I might come home at 1:55. I could see that, maybe.
Yeah, it's kind of cute.
Thelma said she'd come and go as she pleased. They had a little argument about it, and then Thelma left for the party at the Trocadero. When Sid Grauman called West about 2:30 to tell him Thelma was leaving, West figured she wasn't going to get back in time and locked her out. And remember, Thelma didn't even leave when she had Sid call West and say she was going to be home. She danced that tango.
Yeah.
West locked her out. He was going to teach her a lesson. Apparently, when Todd returned at almost 4 a.m., she declined her chauffeur's offer to walk her upstairs because she knew there would be a scene with West. When Thelma found the door locked, she shouted at him, and they had another argument through the door. West told Thelma he didn't want her going to so many parties. Thelma, still a bit drunk, screamed she was invited to one later that day at Mrs. Wallace Ford's, and she was gonna go to that party right now. She climbed the steps to the garage. West followed. When he arrived, she was already in the car. She started the engine, and he ran around and locked the garage door. He wasn't thinking about carbon monoxide. He just wanted to teach her a lesson about who was the boss. So he left and he went to bed. Daylight, West returned to the garage to find Todd's body. He didn't know what to do, so he did nothing. He closed the door, but he didn't lock it. May did say the door was unlocked, and went back to the cafe. All day, when people called for Thelma, he said he didn't know where she was. If he hadn't really known where she was, he would have gone crazy looking for her.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like that explanation.
Explains a lot.
Yeah.
I do like that explanation.
The only wacky part is, first of all, a large party in the San Fernando Valley, that doesn't happen, but even today. But didn't people say they saw her there? Were they just... At
the party?
Yeah.
No, she never arrived at the party.
Oh, that's for sure.
That is for sure. She never arrived at the party. No. I also can think of DiCicco coming out of the shadows and them having a rendezvous.
Well, it's motive.
The motive, right.
I don't think he has a motive, does he? To hurt her?
Except that he's abusive, erratic. Maybe they met and maybe she was upset that he brought a young woman to the Trocadero and they had a fight about that and things got out of hand. But again, there was no bruising on her.
Yeah, it really seems like she died of carbon monoxide poisoning.
Yeah, but didn't try to harm herself. I wish I knew, can you lock the garage from the outside? Was there a key? I don't know that. But the fact also that Schneck, arrived, he's a powerful man, and Schneck and Hal Roach and West was actually an innovative director at his time. He was one of the players in those days. They were all in a club. And I think I remember Hal even saying, I told the police, why go any further with this? He didn't mean to kill her. Just let it go, which is horrible.
Yeah,
But I can see back in that day, it's like, murder. He didn't mean to. He's very talented. He's a talented director. Let's let this one go. But then you got to think on the flip side of that, she's a big star. And not say he killed this wonderful star of ours who makes so much money.
I believe the boys club thing would...
the boys club thing, you're right.
Would roll into this and they'd say, I'll cover your butt, but I can't believe you did this.
Yeah.
And then...
you owe me 3 pictures.
Yeah.
Okay. My resources for this story, the Thelma Todd story, is the book Testimony of Death, Thelma Todd, Mystery, Media, and Myth in 1935 Los Angeles by Marshall Crotty and Patrick Jennings. Good book. Get it on Amazon. LA Times and the following websites: Cinema Scholars, Wikipedia, IMDb, Calisphere, Pacific Palisades History, the New England History Society, and Marvin J. Wolf's blog, Thelma Todd's Death solved.
Beautiful.
That's a wrap for the Writers Hangout. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, like, and thrive. Till we get to hang out again, keep writing. The world needs your stories. The Writers Hangout is sponsored by the Page International Screenwriting Awards. Executive producer, Kristen O'Verne. Producers, Terry Sampson and Sandy Adamitis. Music by Ethan Stoller.